Hey everybody, I want to talk about the workflow here to go from shooting something and going to Netflix, specifically say the scenario of using the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. I'm starting to see things align right now where the door is finally swinging open to the possibility of shooting a feature film from home. Now, you could say like from home, in other words, what do you mean? Like I'm going to shoot the whole film in my house or something? No. What I mean by that is that you could actually, by working on a computer at home, do mixing, do editorial, pretty much work from home basically. Now, the things that have changed is the Blackmagic Pocket 4K. We're going to show you in a minute here the Netflix requirements from their websites, and then I'll link it up for you. But they have a series of requirements that you should seriously look at, because I think not only do these type of things apply to if you're going to Amazon Prime or Netflix or YouTube Red, which are possible vendors that would obviously want to purchase your feature films or possibly fund your television series, is to understand the requirements from which they require. And they require a full minimum UHD 4K sensor. And at this point, the Blackmagic 2.5K, again, all these other cameras, all these, A7S3s and all that, they're all compressed. Now we have a camera that actually can shoot RAW and basically have metadata in it. And that's one of the big requirements that if you go on their website, you will see that kind of pop up. Now, the other thing that has changed is DaVinci Resolve Studio 15. A lot of us aren't geniuses when it comes to understanding offline, online editorial and color correction. For the first time ever, we have a full online system. What does that mean? Well, you're dealing with the raw footage. You're playing back the raw footage in real time. You're editing in RAW. You're color correcting it all in one package via the DaVinci Resolve Studio. You're even adding visual effects via Fusion, which they have. And on top of that, you have an audio mixer system, which is Fairlight, all within DaVinci Resolve Studio 15. The other thing that's not out yet, I believe ProRes RAW is out currently, but Blackmagic RAW is about to be released and be brought forth into the firmware for the Blackmagic Pocket 4K cameras, as well as the Ursas and so forth. And it's already, I think it's just about to get released, and when that happens, we won't have to be worried about the fact that the Blackmagic, these camera systems, these recorders like the Samsung USB-C, and they can't seem to record for a very long length of time, lossless quality 4K DCI. But with the advent of this Blackmagic RAW, I think that's going to all change. Now, the Netflix requirements, I believe they're okay with ProRes, obviously. But again, they definitely want metadata on all this, and there's a certain requirements for color correction. So if you were someone getting into the possibility of doing this on your own, you'd seriously have to consider a lot of understanding in regards to color science. And it's not that hard to understand. Like I said, I did a couple lessons earlier about ACES workflow and XYZ and so forth. And then we have affordable camera equipment. Right now, you can see all types of amazing affordable camera equipment out there, from LED lights to cinema lenses that are very cheap now. And it's just amazing time to get some amazing equipment. I mean, think about it. It was less than, 7-8 years ago that Steadicams were like in the 50,000 range, or 20 to 50,000 range. Now you can get them for $500. They're just pretty nuts. What has not changed, and this is the part that most filmmakers don't want to fess up with, you need an army. An old professor that I used to teach with at Columbia, Julian Grant, this guy shoots 2 features a year, regardless of whether or not they're, the quality, depending on it, but I give him props for actually getting 2 features done a year almost. Guy's just crazy amazing in regards to the ability to pull this stuff off, and you need an army. You're feeding an army, you're moving an army. So that requires, obviously, money. And you know what? This all comes forth from having a really great script. What drives me nuts is I've worked on feature films where the director really just crapped out a terrible script. And I'm sitting there like, you're putting millions of dollars into this film, and you have this horrific script that was written in a day. I have written feature-length scripts. They tell you that you need to write 4 feature scripts and bury them because they'll never see the light of day. So these directors, I won't say who they were, You know, you could read the script. You can tell when you read a script whether it was written in 1 month, 5 months, or 4 years. I actually took one time 4 years to write a script, and then there's other scripts I've written which taken me like a couple months. You know, and you can tell the quality. It's just a matter of just looking at it. I mean, when you see like errors and spelling in there, you know this is just like a throw this together type spiel, and it's just really really bad. And no one ever wants to tell you, you know, your script is bad, but you really need someone like that. And great actors. I think it was Ridley Scott that said it's like 95% of your work is done when you get great actors. Again, that could be found in local theaters, local theater company chains. I'm in Chicago, so we have a lot of access to different areas up here like Second City, and I forgot the other one. I can never remember the name. It's a big theater company out here, and that's where we found lots of our actors, and they were actually very good, amazing actors that work in theater in the Chicago area, because Chicago is not necessarily film. There's television here, but it's not really the case. So let's go ahead and take a look at this. If you just Google search Netflix requirements for feature film, you'll find the whole wonderful setup here for them. And Netflix is anxious to get all types of films started. And again, what's the beauty of these online-based systems? Honestly, they're punching out more quality than ever. I just recently watched a film by the Coen brothers that was just released on Netflix, and it was really well done. They went directly to Netflix with their film. They don't have to go through any distributor or anything like that. They go straight to Netflix. Now you do need representation when pitching this to Netflix. They're not going to just take any Joe Schmo off the street, and that comes by having a good quality film, or you know, just obviously, you know, what's worth doing is worth doing well. So if you have a good script, you're probably going to get somebody that's going to be looking at you and going, oh, this is a great script, let's get this filmed. Oh, you know what you're doing, you're a filmmaker, you have some history in commercials. We can trust that you can do it. It's all about trust that you can actually put a good film together. So this is specifications and guides. You can see the color grading, color manage workflow in Resolve. I noticed that they're really pushing Resolve here, right? So this is kind of like a big, you know, in your face. Don't bother with anything else. Go with, you know, Resolve and so forth, color correction. So you can see they're going to talk about, and I did a whole video on ACES workflow, how your whole project settings could be, and this is great stuff. And you do not want to run out the door and shoot a feature for the purposes of this online-based system of submission without actually keeping this stuff in mind. And here you're even showing you the color space. ACES CCT they're recommending. And of course they're showing you the ACES output device transform. In this case is Rec 709. So obviously you're looking at HD TVs in people's homes that you were looking at. The future, they do talk a little bit about UHD, which is coming. And I've actually had filmmaker, I call them hacks, former instructors that I've worked with at previous colleges that came to me and like, I need to get my film done in Rec 2020 so I can be a big shot and I'll have less competition. Like there's, you know, how about just making a good film? Like stop trying to use the advantage of supply demand. Like, oh, there's just not enough UHD content out there. But if I make a crappy movie in UHD or high HDR, you know, it's going to be, you know, I'll make it. You know, it's just like make a great film. That's the problem with a lot of film schools out here. We got a lot of terrible film teachers that pretty much don't know what they're doing, or they make terrible films. They think they're under the illusion that they're making great films, and they always have this sort of bitterness because they don't understand why the world don't understand their goofy films. So anyway, so here we got bringing in clips. It talks about the ACES transforms. For instance, if you're using Sony S-Log 3, that's what you would like obviously bring in. So I talked about this and demonstrated this in my previous videos before this. It talks about the different formats and so forth. What I found kind of interesting in the mix of all this, and again, it's good read, not just for going to Netflix or, again, Amazon Prime or YouTube Red, but the possibility of doing a feature film that might go to theaters and where you might need to master with P3 or something. And you might kind of keep that in mind. Color management is something, as you as a filmmaker, if you just go willy-nilly and run out the door and start filming stuff, I mean, you're asking for it. You're bottlenecking yourself up, you know, at the beginning of the pipeline here. So make sure you know what you got to do otherwise. So you could see there's all types of, you know, little options here. It talks about let's see if I can go back here. Let's see, specifications and guides. You can see post-production. Here's production. This is a good one. It talks about color pipeline, cameras, and image capture. So the cameras and image capture are rather interesting because it talks about cameras must have true 4K UHD sensor, equal to or greater than 3840 photosites wide. So they're talking about UHD, right? And then you have DCI and so forth like that. But they're talking about the wideness here, notice. They're not talking about the height. They're talking about the wideness. So if we know DCI, right? DCI is, I believe, I'm trying to remember what the DCI is, but anyway. Just understanding that these are the strong requirements here that have to be put forth. Now, they don't list the Blackmagic Pocket 4K as a camera to be used, but they do mention the Blackmagic Ursa. So again, this is a big one I would definitely consider throughout the process. The capture requirements, RAW, obviously, right? So it talks about that. Compressed. Minimum, here's another one, minimum of 16-bit or 10-bit log processing. And then a bit rate at 240 megabytes at 2398 right, frames per second. Notice these are all the typical logs you get in Alexa and so forth. And then you have these guys here. So another thing to talk about is black balancing. So that's something to definitely look into. Anamorphic lenses for you folks that need to be so artsy that you need to have those goofy lines, anamorphic oval-shaped things that you're just adamant about. You might want to consider that. Secondary cameras, film cameras, and again, here's the approved cameras, as you can see here. So you have the Arri Alexa, Canon, Panasonic, all these different cameras in here. So you can see that here's the Ursa, right? So if you take a look at the effective pixels here, right? 4608, right? 4608. So again, is that higher than, we come back to the top, as far as wideness, right? 3840, right? So that's something to keep in mind. Now remember that most TVs on people's screens are going to be 16:9. That'll be UHD 4K. So you have to consider that reality, but they do allow for up to no higher than 2 to 1 ratio or whatever, or 1 to 2.00 aspect ratio, which is a pretty crazy aspect ratio in allowance, in my personal opinion. But they do allow for, widescreen bars and so forth to be eventually formatted. So again, you can see all the different options here. I would actually call them up and find out, make sure, hey, Blackmagic 4K kind of meets your requirements here. Are we good to go? And again, that's why I think this camera is the future. A lot of people are talking about this Fujifilm camera, X3 I think it is, and how like, oh, let's go switch over to that. It's got the same sort of color look as the Blackmagic. Yeah, but you're still getting raw. I mean, I think you can output a 10-bit signal out of that, but you're going to have to go through an external recorder. I could be wrong about all that, but anyway, just be aware of it. So you can see all types, specifications and guidelines, lots of stuff here. You should definitely take a look at this type of stuff. You can see even it goes down to artwork, stuff like that, artwork training. I mean, they really go above and beyond to try to help you out here. Netflix has been pretty cool. I've heard good things and bad things about Netflix. I've heard a lot of people say that the independent filmmaker will get gypped financially in regards to them buying your film, but if you're a big name, obviously you're going to make some serious money because you got some clout, so to speak. So go through all these things: production assets, data management, big time backup rules. See, they're even telling you how to back up your stuff on RAIDs and so forth. And I remember someone was saying, and on the feature film that we did, which was Thrill Ride, we had 3 copies of the actual film. I think it was 2 or 3, and every hard drive went home on a different computer, in a different car. So that we'd have our DIT on set, which was our guy. Whenever they film, he would come over, unload all the data off the drives from the camera, and he would copy and paste those basically to 2 to 3 drives, and every day those drives would be, there would be a backup that would go somewhere else. It wouldn't be in the actual physical vicinity of the other hard drive. So if the studio burned down, they didn't have the movie. So again, I think we're at a point, we're at a precipice, so to speak, where you're going to be able to pull this off. I mean, the big thing will be your hard drive space, and I believe Blackmagic RAW and ProRes RAW is going to solve that issue. But I wouldn't doubt that you wouldn't need about 20 terabytes minimum of hard drive space, and that's not even including your backup. So the big thing, again, I think financially will be the need for that. But today, I think that possibility is definitely in the works. It's not very expensive. You can go with non-SSD based hard drives, and if as long as you're backing them up with another one, you should be okay. I don't think there's going to be some terrible thing. Now, big hard drives, especially RAIDs, can go goofy on you. But if you do have backups, I mean, you'll be safe. I think you'll be safe. If you're working in a small vicinity, a film usually takes, 3 to 4 months to a year to make. So if you're in actual physical principal photography of it and you're over here backing everything up, the possibility of your hard drives going bad, if they're brand new and they're checked and they're properly formatted, is very rare. But that it is a possibility, and that's why you back things up. So I think that's the last sort of reality. I think once Blackmagic RAW, ProRes RAW starts popping in here and we start to see these low files that are still raw, low size files, small files, I think we're going to be in the green. But again, starts with a great script, starts with a great story, starts with good actors. That's the problem I see. We have now the democratization of video. You can do anything. But the problem I'm seeing is so many filmmakers doing camera tests and not actually shooting feature films or over-the-shoulder shots or including dialogue, including sound mixing. They're just lazy beyond belief. And maybe because they don't have the crew to do it, I understand that. But at the same time, I found that if you just spend more time filmmaking as opposed to film camera testing, I think you'll have a higher success than most people that continue to spend the rest of their lives waiting for that perfect camera.